Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Naked Without Shame podcast with your hosts, Megan and Morgan. Today, we are excited to be talking about a theme in the theology of the body, about the importance of the body in the ability to love, precisely through what John Paul II calls the spousal meaning of the body. Now, why is this important to talk about, to learn, to discover for ourselves? Continue listening to find out.
Open your hearts, open up your hearts to Christ. Do not be afraid.
Today's episode is brought to you by Select International Tours. At the end of 2021, AWAKEN Catholic is hosting 2 pilgrimage opportunities for you to join us in. One being to the Holy Land with Nick Delatorre, the host of the AWAKEN Catholic Show, and us, Megan and Morgan, the hosts of the podcast Naked Without Shame. So Morgan, what is our pilgrimage going to be about?
We are going on a cruise on the Seine River in France. So we're going to Paris to see the tomb of Saint Joan of Arc, who's one of my favorite saints. She's actually my patron. Lisieux, where Teresa of Lisieux is buried, another one of my faves. And also to Lourdes, to see Our Lady of Lourdes. So should be incredible.
Yes. If you are interested in our cruise or the trip to the Holy Land, you can go to selectinternationaltours.com/awaken.
Before we start, we just wanted to invite you to download the AWAKEN app. The AWAKEN app is basically like a social media alternative. It's a community of people where you can chat and you can talk to us, the show hosts. You can have access to prayers. You can buy things, all sorts of cool stuff. So please consider downloading the AWAKEN app.
Also, AWAKEN Catholic has partnered with Select International Tours to do some pilgrimages coming up. There will be one in the Holy Land and in France. So if those interest you in joining some show hosts for those pilgrimages, you can go to selectinternationaltours.com/awaken. Also, there's an opportunity for you to join Morgan and I's patronage community through the Naked Without Shame podcast. On that website, you will get access to different perks by being a member of the patronage community and supporting our podcast. So to do that, you go to nakedwithoutshameshow.com. All right. So welcome back, everyone. You're watching Naked Without Shame. And today we are diving into a pretty good topic, one that's pretty essential for understanding John Paul II's theological anthropology found in the theology of the body. We're going to talk about the body and its spousal character, its spousal meaning, so to say. But first, I want to talk a little bit about, Morgan, what you always say, which I love, the fact that things mean things. You know? Yeah, things mean things. I mean, let's explain what that means. So things meaning things is really like kind of understanding their purpose, what something is for, maybe why something exists. So the beauty about a Christian worldview is precisely that we can see the meaning of things given by God and an order and a design for how things are meant to flourish and function and be happily themselves. So, for instance, a glass of water, like its purpose is to hold water for us to drink. Glasses, wearing glasses has the function and the purpose of helping someone see, right? Like a house protects people. It gives shelter to people. So with adopting this understanding that things mean things, you start to see, oh, there's like an order and a way in which things communicate about themselves. Mm-hmm. So likewise, the body has, I guess, a lot of meanings, but fundamentally, we want to say that the body has this spousal characteristic. So when you think of like a spouse, Morgan, what do you think of when you hear the word spouse? What comes to mind?
Being married.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think
plain as that.
You automatically think also of like sexuality, procreation.
Yeah.
Yeah. But is that like, would you say that's what the spousal meaning of the body is? Like, is it only the ability to be married and like have kids? Or would you say it's more than that? Leading question.
Yes, leading question. I'm going to say it's more than that.
Okay.
It's more. Always more. Infinitely more,
Yeah.
No, it is important to affirm that, like, when we think of a spouse, or when we think of maybe a spousal characteristic to ourselves, that yes, we see that in light of an earthly marriage, an earthly union. But it does mean more than that, because the body carries within itself that meaning whether or not we're married.
Yeah.
Right. So the spousal attribute, let's first talk about more of what you said. Like, instinctively we think of spouses as, oh, somebody I've married.
Yeah.
Right. That's like pretty simple.
Or like this spousal character of my person is only something that like matters if I'm married. And if I'm not married, it's kind of just like, whatever, we're male, female, but that doesn't really have any bearing on like who I am in a more general sense, basically, or like my day-to-day life, or like my personality. I think that's like a very common modern assumption, really, that I know I at least definitely subscribed to when I was young. I mean, it's kind of our culture.
Yeah.
So to say this is very radical, to say that the spousal meaning of the body is something greater than just like sex, basically. Like,
yeah. Let's get into that a little bit. Can I lead with maybe adding to that the spousal dimension also includes, like you're saying, sexuality, like masculinity and femininity. Like, that's how we know that the body is spousal, right?
yes.
So, John Paul II says in the Theology of the Body that the body reveals that there is a reciprocal for happening. Like, I am for another person, because the male body and the female body alone don't make sense by themselves. Right. So there's this like communication of the sexes that says I am for someone. And in light of like thinking of a spouse in marriage, you think, okay, yeah, this reciprocal for, I understand in my experience, would be then for myself to wed to this person. My body, it makes sense for me to be wed to someone for life, for the sake of intimacy, for the sake of a union with one person, and also for the fruitfulness of that union in children.
Okay. Yeah. So you're saying written in my body. I mean, even just like think about it in a bare sort of like without even going theological yet, I think, like philosophically, phenomenologically, a fancy word. But basically like in my experience, the body written into it has this ability to give of itself in this way that is like fruitful, in this way that gives life. And that is like something that, colors my experience from the time of childhood onward. I mean, especially like at puberty, when you start to like really realize like, wow, like my body is made to give itself and made for procreation. I mean, like, but this is something that is inscripted on me, and it impacts the way that I basically relate to other people. I relate to the world. I relate to myself. It's this very, very fundamental thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what does that mean? I mean, how do we interpret that? Because you can interpret that many different ways. I mean, the culture will interpret it one way. Right now, like the modern culture has its own interpretation. Then, John Paul II has a very different one. So like, how do we?
Yeah. So that's a good point. I think what seems to me is that maybe before the time of contraception, say, like where contraception, using something to cut off, bringing life from a union of man and woman, like it changed the meaning, right, of the body in a sense, like its end, its purpose, like we're saying, like the body means something. It's ordered to this end in sexuality. But with contraception, we kind of get confused by that, right? Like there's a new meaning.
Yeah.
So
I can kind of like use this part of myself or use this part of another person, basically, without the fruitfulness. It can become just kind of something I choose to do for my own pleasure, as opposed to like, it has this meaning already. I mean, I can avoid that meaning, basically, somehow.
Right. And so, yeah, like this topic is really important to talk about now because precisely like there's this change or this shift in how we understand our bodies, which is why we want to talk about it today. So you had mentioned that meaning, and then John Paul II's meaning of like this spousal call, this call to communion. And he really does affirm that when we're loving in this way, male and female, it can't be it can't exclude the body, right? Like the body is not arbitrary to love. The body is not arbitrary to this expression, this reciprocal for in a spousal way in marriage. So do you have any thoughts about that? Like, like that the body matters.
Yeah.
In that expression of its meaning, like of love. Or maybe I said it for you.
I think I just almost want to like talk about like play the devil's advocate a bit.
Okay,
like
go for it.
Yeah, I guess why would we say that it matters? Because it is very common to say it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And like you're saying, I think that this new way of seeing the body, where like sexuality doesn't matter, is something that is like very influenced by like new technologies that we have, basically to separate, sexuality from like its
life.
Inherent meaning, from life,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. So I can kind of do what I want with it.
So the devil's advocate says, why does the body really matter?
Why does it matter? I mean, I can use these technologies and make it not matter.
Mm-hmm.
I can kind of do whatever I want with my body with technology.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
express myself and I also can love people in like whatever way I want.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't necessarily have to have any meaning inherently. It has the meaning that I give it. That is like really kind of the modern proposal.
Mm-hmm.
How would we answer that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm thinking of something that John Paul II says.
Okay.
And he says that the body has a spousal attribute in that it has a power to express love. And in that way, man becomes a gift and fulfills his very, very meaning meaning of his being and existence.
Yeah.
That's what he says. So that's like a little... Let's bring it down, right? So what stands out in that definition, the body's power to express love through masculinity and femininity in the spousal meaning of the body, it fulfills our very meaning and existence. So there's something that masculinity and femininity have to do with our existence and ultimately our happiness. Because once again, when we know what we're for, we flourish. We live well. We're happy in light of God's design for us. So that's how I would begin to answer that question, that it has something to do with the meaning of your life and why we exist.
Yeah.
So I think we do intuit, right, that the desire to be married, the desire to be a spouse really comes from a desire to be happy. I mean, you like fantasize like, oh, like it'd be great to, I don't know, be in this happy little life with a family or with a partner. Those are good desires, right? So those things in a way have something to do with and point to our ultimate like fulfillment in God, I would say, in a way. Like our purpose is to love.
Yes.
Like we're meant to love.
Yeah. And like that love manifests itself in the sort of natural experiential level as love between persons, but like that love expands and goes greater, and we desire that it becomes more than that, actually. Like if it just ends in the other person, it kind of just dies and fizzles out and kind of can't complete itself. But if it has this upward direction, like to the infinite, to God ultimately, then it can kind of fulfill itself, and then it can become like the most beautiful thing in the world, actually. Yeah,
exactly. You're not closing in on just this level, just this person, really kind of being at risk of crushing that person because they can't ultimately fulfill you with your need for love. But when you participate in that love with God in marriage, it's beautiful and you're happy. before we continue, are you tired of being stuck at home during this pandemic and want to go out and see the world? Well, join us for a cruise in France or with Nick Delatorre to a pilgrimage in the Holy Land.
To find out more, go to selectinternationaltours.com/awaken. Okay, so to answer to this question that I asked about why can we not like give our own meaning to why is it like the spousal meaning of the body has this like given meaning by God? Why can't I just make that meaning up? I would say when we try to make that meaning up, it's something that we have to, like I was saying, kind of use like certain, technologies or like this force on the body to make it kind of do what I want. So it kind of has this, even if we're not aware of this, there's this implicit sort of like controlling of my body. For instance, in the case of contraception, it's like I have to do something unnatural to my body that's harmful for it usually, or at least, put some sort of barrier between my body and another person. That this is like a force that I have to basically exert upon nature in order to do what I want. And I'd say like this, the beautiful thing about the spousal meaning of the body, at least in something that really always struck me, it's like this idea that the meaning of the body is given and it's not something I can decide for myself and create, is that it creates this harmony between myself and nature. And that harmony is not always an easy thing to swallow. It can involve a lot of suffering, and that's a very real thing. For everyone, not just, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's difficult, but if I, am kind of given the grace and I kind of work at accepting this is sort of the meaning of who I am, given by God, and I trust God, I know God loves me. And again, it can be a struggle, but I have this harmony with myself. I'm at peace with my body, basically. Like this is who I am. And then there's this, I don't know how else to say it. There's this harmony.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful. I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay.
But I think we can get out of it.
Hopefully.
So as you were talking, which I love your answer, I was thinking of all the people that might be listening who maybe just have had a really bad experience of sexuality and just of even marriage or of children, and thinking, as you were saying, like you hear the words of the theology of the body and what it means to like have a spousal attribute for love and for happiness. And like maybe that's just, I don't know, maybe it just makes me think I want to be made for something else. Like I want my body to be for something else. Yeah. I don't want it to be for
natural
family.
Meaning of my body causes me to suffer.
Right.
And
so and in relationships, the closeness of marriage can involve the suffering, and like I don't want that. So I want my body to mean something else.
Right.
Or, having children scares me, or maybe I had a bad experience as a child. Like I don't want to bring kids into the world. Mm-hmm. So yes, I sympathize with that a lot. I think it's common. But once again, like you were saying, like working that out with God and reminding ourselves, like, no, like happiness is possible in embracing like our natural call to love in the family.
Yeah.
As men and women.
Yeah.
Being fruitful.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, maybe this is like a very simplified answer. I think it comes down to a relationship with Christ. Christ gives us the meaning of suffering.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of this stuff is like basically impossible without him, without grace. So if I have a relationship with Christ and I know that I'm loved by him and I want to love him in return, I am able to enter into something I know will cause me to suffer in a way that I never thought possible, that it really is not possible on a natural level. And it's kind of it colors everything. It changes your entire horizon of like understanding what the spousal meaning of the body is. It's not just a natural reality. It ultimately has to become spiritual. That's how it fulfills itself. Yeah. So the meaning of my person is not just the ability to give myself in a marriage. Yeah. That's definitely, it's a sign. That's what John Paul II says, that it's a sign of a greater call of man. And it's this very important, basically sign language of actually who man is and who God is. And that's like something that, we'd have to unpack. It's a lot, but, it doesn't just end at on the natural level. It's something that again, it allows me to sort of, see and then, expand outward into this relationship with God. I mean, that's the ultimate fulfillment of the spousal meaning of the body.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Finding it in God, this expansion beyond just, the spousal relationship.
Right.
That's good. Yeah. Awesome. Well, is there any other thoughts you have about why this matters? Or maybe when you heard about the spousal meaning of the body initially, like what kind of came to you?
Mm-hmm. I think for me, like I was saying before, it was, I definitely I struggled with it. I mean, I wasn't raised Catholic, and I think I had a lot of implicit or explicit feminist beliefs, or just beliefs influenced by the culture in some way that I kind of wanted to define myself. I didn't want someone to tell me because I'm a woman, this means I'm this way, or I have to have kids and that's the fulfillment of my life, all these things. That was very ingrained into me as a child. But I think that when I started to get older and around the time of my conversion, I did really feel, I mean, I think it was truly it was a bodily thing. It was something came from deep inside of me that I didn't even really understand intellectually. But when I heard these teachings about the spousal meaning of the body, it really corresponded with me actually, and was very beautiful, even if it kind of caused a tension. It kind of made me re-understand what my life was for. I remember distinctly having this moment of realization where I had always kind of wanted to be, my big thing when I was younger, 20 and below, basically, was I wanted to be a singer. I wanted to be a famous singer. Mm-hmm. And I wrote music, and it was a big part of my life. Yeah. And that was kind of how I thought, if I can do this, and if I can become basically successful, this is going to fulfill my life. This is going to be my happiness. Mm-hmm. And when someone proposed to me that just this idea that to give yourself to another person and ultimately to God, that is the actual fulfillment. That's what actual happiness is. And it's much greater, and it's much more, expansive and beautiful and heroic, actually, even though it seems more simple than any kind of worldly success. It was difficult for me to kind of stomach, but at the same time, it was very beautiful and peaceful for me. And it really corresponded on a deep level. Because I think at that point I had already realized maybe worldly success is not all it's chalked up to be. Maybe I won't be actually happy. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the inspiration for my conversion too, is realizing these things. So I think that it came from my body though. I think it wasn't an intellectual thing. And there's this deep desire I found in myself. I mean, it was kind of covered over, but this deep desire to give of myself, totally to someone and to have children. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I think that again, women in our culture, it's often covered over, and dismissed. But I think that oftentimes, especially as we get older, we find it very deeply, and it's something that I think almost we can be ashamed of, in our cultural climate, but it's such a beautiful thing. And it's something we really again, this harmony, when we listen to it and we allow it to kind of have a voice and not kind of shame it and say, this is, I need to be more than this. I need to become whatever, successful, all these things. And not that those things are, for women impossible. It's definitely part of also the women's vocation to be in the world. Mm-hmm. I mean, not saying that at all, but again, to kind of quiet these, this inner voice, this desire to give life, that causes a disharmony in myself. Mm-hmm. It makes me, I have to push it down. Either we're using chemicals like contraception, this totally unnatural thing that I do to my body and my hormones, or in various other ways too. Mm-hmm. It's this fight against myself and my body.
I loved hearing that. That was a really great insight. I can relate with pieces of that. Just kind of feeling I for the purpose of my life, I want to do this. Like you said, you wanted to be a singer. Like I am naturally just a very ambitious person. I like have a lot of goals. I want to accomplish a lot of things. I want to make change. So I can relate to that in a way. And yeah, it was a journey for me as well to like really sit with and pray with this call to be for another in a vocation, in marriage. And yeah, it's still a journey, but the more you think about it and appreciate, like you said, the simplicity, like the simple call and foundational call, you're happy, you know, you're happier. So really it's just about returning to like what's fundamental and simple, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, okay. I think that's good for now.
That's the basics. Spousal meaning of the body.
Yeah. It's important.
It's important.
Okay, well, before we wrap up, I want to remind you again that if you are interested in taking a pilgrimage with any Awaken Catholic hosts, you can go to selectinternationaltours.com/awaken to check those out. So thanks again for listening and joining in today. We hope to see you next time.